we can probably separate Van Gogh's career into two parts, before and after Paris. Before he went to Paris, he was an okay painter. I like his paintings of peasants, especially his potato eaters painting, which was new. His landscapes and seascapes were also quite good. We can almost generally say that his dark-colored still lifes are quite unique. If he had not gone to Paris, he might have led a more peaceful life somewhere, but he would probably be unknown today. Painters must learn from others. In Van Gogh's fast progressing time, he must understand what other leading painters were doing. We have pointed out along the way where he got the components of his style from. Émile Bernard, Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, Paul Signac, and Paul Gauguin, among others, with the help of his brother Theo. Needless to say, those bright-colored paintings from Impressionism to Pointillism to Gauguin's symbolism deeply impressed Van Gogh. But the teachings of those artists were just as important. For instance, if Gauguin had not encouraged him to paint from memory, Van Gogh might have missed the significance of Gauguin's so-called symbolism. On his way out of Paris, Van Gogh even paid a visit to Georges Seurat, the father of Pointillism. From artistic standpoint, his more than 650 letters to his brother portrayed an exemplary career of an exploring artist. Some thought that this much letter writing counted as a mental disease in itself, but I think that letter writing became Van Gogh's mode of thinking. In other words, the habit of writing to Theo became his habit of thinking. For instance, in August 1888, after staying at Arles for 6 months, he wrote to Theo, I quote, "It's just that I found that what I learned in Paris is fading, and that I'm returning to my ideas that came to me in the country before I knew Impressionists. And I wouldn't be very surprised if the Impressionists were soon to find fault with my way of doing things, which was fertilized more by the ideas of Delacroix than by theirs." To him, Impressionism might have faded in his mind, but bright canvas and pure colors clearly did not fade by any measure. Just to illustrate how much information was communicated through these 650 letters, let's quote more passages from the same letter. "Because instead of trying to render exactly what I have before my eyes, I use color more arbitrarily in order to express myself forcefully. Well, let's let that lie as far as theory goes, but I'm going to give you an example of what I mean." The key word here is arbitrary. For someone who had been painting for quite a while, arbitrary pretty much meant selecting colors subconsciously, probably not the colors of the original objects. Also, the subconscious selection was done premeditatedly, as Van Gogh went ahead and described the kind of color distortions that he planned to make. In other words, his color schemes were not the results of accidents, like the modern abstract painters flying by the seats of their pants because they don't have to go to any certain place. Before Van Gogh started painting, he actually had something in his mind to express. Of course, I'm not saying here that he did not take advantage of his accidents. After describing that thoroughly to Theo, Van Gogh started to ask for money. I quote, "So I assure you that if by chance you sometimes send me a little more money, that would benefit the paintings, but not me." That was pure begging, in a way bordering being foolish. It was almost funny that he went ahead to propose a social solution for his problem of not having enough money. The things needed for painting are like those of a ruinous mistress. You can do nothing without money, and you never have enough of it. And so, painting should be done at society's expense, and the artist shouldn't be overburdened by it. Whether or not painting was financially ruinous, his desire was for the society, which meant through government, to pay for his work. Of course, nobody today would object for the society to pay Van Gogh for his pursuit of art. But the practical problem is that Van Gogh was not recognized by the society during his lifetime. In other words, if society did pay for the pursuit of art, it would not pay Van Gogh. If the government paid everybody who claimed to be an artist, everybody under the sun will make that claim. In any case, Van Gogh was able to work on art with the support of Theo for many years. As Theo owned all Van Gogh's paintings, his family was richly rewarded by this investment. Since socialism is never going to promote art, private funding was the only thing left. Other than self-funding, family funding is probably the most likely way, because families probably know the best. That model worked out, at least in Van Gogh's case. Okay, let's continue with the letter. The last passage was Van Gogh's definition of a healthy person. If you are well, you should be able to live on a piece of bread while working the whole day long, and still having the strength to smoke and drink your glass. Besides the socialist ideas, we see that in Arles, away from Paris, Van Gogh had a chance to combine the Paris influence with his Dutch background. Background influence is probably something more powerful than anybody thinks. I had zero art training in China and trained myself entirely along the Western lines in the US. But when I started creating painting, I felt this almost unavoidably powerful Chinese influence. For Van Gogh, who had painted in Holland for many years before moving to Paris, the influence must have been overwhelming. Before we end the series on Van Gogh, let's use this same letter to dig a little deeper into his style. On this painting we showed in episode 7, Van Gogh said, "I have tried to express the terrible passions of humanity by means of red and green. The room is blood red and dark yellow, with a green billiard table in the middle. There are 4 lemon yellow lamps with a glow of orange and green. Everywhere here is a clash and contrast of the most alien reds and greens. In the figures of little sleeping hooligans, in the empty, dreary room, in violet and blue, the blood red and the yellow-green of the billiard table, for instance, contrast with the soft, tender Louis XV green of the counter, on which there is a rose nosegay. The white clothes of the landlord, watchful in a corner of that furnace, turned lemon yellow, or pale luminous green." End of quote. As we can see here, much more obviously than the yellow house, the distortions were intentional. For instance, Van Gogh made the pool table walk. The stable posture should be something like this. Okay, enough reading of that letter. If you have time, I highly recommend that you read Van Gogh's letters. If you don't want to buy the letters like I did, the letters are publicly available over the internet. Of course, at the end, I must include here by reference our discussions of Van Gogh's Starry Night in episode 3, season 1. Because Van Gogh's paintings did not sell in his lifetime, it was possible for the family to keep a good amount of them together for the Van Gogh Museum, opened in 1973 in Amsterdam. It is definitely worth a visit. For those with diverse tastes, they could also visit the coffee shops and red windows. For me, art alone was sufficient. I don't need coffee, if you know what I mean. When I exited the museum, they served free champagne. I took 2. I will see you next time.